The guest for this week's Compri podcast is Emma Gregan, who is a professional French horn player in the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, as well as the artistic director of Adelaide Horn Jam. In this conversation, we talked about the role of the French horn in orchestral music, as well as other topics surrounding her academic research at the University of Adelaide, such as ensemble management, the influence of community music entities, and many other interesting facts about being a professional musician.
I started playing the horn when I was 8. I went to school in Brisbane and started through the instrumental music program there, which is, most state schools and private schools in Brisbane have fairly good music programs up there. So started through the state system, went through the band program in my primary school, and that's basically just kept going since then. So.
And was the horn like your first instrument? Has it always been your first instrument?
Yeah, which is quite unusual. Yeah,
Wow.
A lot of people start on, if they're starting on brass, a lot of people come from the brass band system. Obviously, a lot of people play piano or sing or whatever before that as well. Yeah, but for me, I didn't really do any of that. I just went straight into that system, which was a bit strange. So, yeah.
What about the horn that really captured your curiosity, like made you kept going?
I think at the beginning it wasn't so much the horn, it was I just wanted to play music. I liked music, and that was just the instrument I was given. But over time, I think the quality of the sound, I think for most horn players, the sound is the thing that really captures people to continue playing. But also I think, it has a really interesting and special role in a lot of ensembles. So I think that was a really motivating factor as well. I enjoyed the process of playing with others, and I enjoyed the process of playing, with other horn players in orchestras and bands. So I think that was something that kept me going a lot through my education. Yeah.
What is the role, like what makes the horn section, let me put it a different way. Because, I'll just start by a story of my own. So when I went to your horn jam, your most recent horn jam, Adelaide Horn Day, there was a chamber item, and there was a piano and a violin.
Yeah.
And then there was a horn. Like the sound of the horn basically, to me, like made everything very orchestral.
Yeah.
So that from that moment, I just kept thinking like, what is it about the horn? Like not even, that it's very different from the other brass instrument. Yeah. The horn is almost like a very special identity of the orchestra.
Yeah.
So I always imagine like if the orchestra is playing and the horn's never there, there's no horn, it just doesn't sound orchestral, it doesn't sound filmy.
Yeah.
And it even the horn, like even it was only 3 instruments on stage, it was piano and string, and then the horn made everything just so much bigger.
Yeah. The horn is interesting because, what you're describing is something I think a lot of people experience, which is that the horn has a very unique sound.
Yeah.
And it has a very unique role in a lot of chamber music and a lot of orchestral music as well. And I think primarily that role is that it's a kind of glue between different sounds. So, yes, the horn is a brass instrument, but actually in reality it bridges the gap between the woodwinds and the brass. So it has that slightly more mellow sound, that slightly more covered sound out in the orchestra when you're listening. And it kind of bridges that directness that you get from the brass with the kind of more, different textures and different colours and silveriness that you get from the winds. So when you get that kind of texture in there, that also helps to blend with, some of the inner string voices as well. So like if you think about the role the viola plays within the string section, it's almost like what the horn does for the wind and the brass.
Right. So it connects,
so,
instrument groups that have more distinctive characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it acts as a bridging. Right.
Yeah, and then of course it has its own, sort of tone color and different characteristics. I think that's the other thing about the horn is it's a very adaptable sound. It's not something that's exclusively associated with prettiness or exclusively associated with this sort of ferociousness of brass playing. It's incredibly adaptable to different sort of types of sounds and different types of colors, and great players have that ability to kind of shift between sort of sound worlds. And when you've got an instrument that is not only acting in that role in the orchestra, but also has the ability to change and adapt within that, it creates a lot of space for texture and colour that, I guess the orchestra is kind of known for, is having that really broad range of orchestral tones. So when you hear it in a chamber setting with strings and piano, it adds that extra level of colour, but also blends those instruments together. So it kind of creates that sort of sense of unity, I guess, often in wind quintets, brass quintets, that's the role that it plays.
So even in a wind quintet, like playing with flutes and bassoons and things like that, the horn's also involved.
Yeah, the wind quintet is, called, some people call it woodwind quintet. I don't think that's necessarily correct. So they're woodwind quartets.
Yep.
But a wind quintet, is flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and horn.
Could you look up what a woodwind quintet typically looks like? Yeah, I guess like from a sound, context, that makes the horn very special, like very important.
Yeah, in terms of from a brass perspective, it's
the horn's in the middle.
Yeah. Right. I guess there can be different seating arrangements and things, but essentially it's got that slightly more light texture that matches the woodwinds very well. So I think yes, we are a brass instrument, but
it's actually Andrew Bain in this picture.
It's Andrew Bain.
It's Los Angeles.
Los Angeles wind quintet. It's great.
Wow. And what it to me, like the horn just has so much. It almost gives the audience like a very primitive feeling, because I assume that the horn's probably the oldest instrument, really.
Yeah, there's certainly a case for that.
Historically,
other than the voice, But it's I guess that tradition. I mean, who can possibly know the exact details? But obviously, if you look back to certainly ancient instruments, and then prior to that, obviously it's a bit of conjecture, but. Bones of animals and horns and things are literally sort of in nature. Yeah. So, and even like shells and things like that were blown in the same way. So it is obviously an ancient sort of primitive practice, I suppose, that's obviously developed over time. But it does still really have that sense of a call to action, I suppose. It would have been used to herald, it would have been used to do all sorts of things like
hunting.
That. Yeah, absolutely. That carried through. The ancestry of the modern horn is really from that hunting practice in the sort of Austro-Bohemian sort of time. So that's, the European sort of royalty hunting sort of stuff. That all comes from that period, and our modern players now descend from that practice. So, that whole lineage of hunting and the outdoors and that sort of, active kind of, I guess, human sort of way of living is very real still, I think.
Yeah, it's very evident in even in film soundtracks, like the horn they get given the most iconic
definitely
linear sound, very memorable sound, like popular sound.
I think the film industry's definitely popularized that sort of that Hollywood horn sound sort of thing.
Like Hans Zimmer's 1000 horn section.
Yeah, I mean, like John Williams as well has been one of the biggest sort of influence. Yeah, if you want to hire 12 horn players, or maybe 16.
Yeah, that's crazy. And like, so in a brass section, are the horns like more engineered? Like, are they more modernized compared to the other instruments, like trombone, trumpet? Like, because like, when you look at them physically, trombones and trumpets, they're quite simple. They're put together quite simple. But when you look at the French horn, like it's round and it's got so many layers. Yeah,
sure. I guess like from a visual perspective, the horn looks like a much more complex instrument. Yeah. I mean, the mechanism is essentially the same as the other brass, the modern brass. Obviously, the trombone's slightly different, but the mechanism is essentially the same, that we're playing different partials on different harmonic series with the lip, and also by changing the actual harmonic series by changing the length of the tubing. So that's essentially what the valves do, and the trombone player just does that using the slide. So it's not really a more advanced technology than the other brass.
I'm a dumb pianist. I have no.
Okay, you're right.
Look up that theme about horn scales on a piano keyboard or whatever. It's very silly. It just made me laugh so much.
I like that. Yeah, the meme.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in. It's so funny. Yeah, because obviously what I deal with is very, every single key. And you see the strings and different length. You see the inner workings of the instrument. But when when I look at the horn, like it's like a maze.
Well, the piano is interesting actually, because it's it is a very linear visual representation of what's going on. Yeah, that's I love that.
Yeah.
But
wow.
yeah, I think for us, obviously, yeah, that, you know, but the same actually is the same for the string instruments as well. They actually deal a lot, you know, with that sort of partials on harmonic series and things like that when they go into their harmonic register. So they actually have, you know, and obviously the notes get closer together as you go up the string. I'm not a string player, but it is actually the same concept as that in a way. It's just that it's slightly less visual.
Yeah, you don't see it. You can only feel.
Yeah. But the same level of sort of, the same concept applies to playing very high on a string instrument. The level of accuracy with your fingers needs to be obviously a lot more precise. And the same goes for playing the horn or any other brass instrument. The higher you go, the closer those partials get together, and then the harder it is obviously to, you know, produce an accurate pitch. So it is actually the same level of, you know, the same concept across.